And Marie can't let it slide. She brings up the will again. Christmas with these assholes again. Cousin Bill forgot my name, still insists we play charades. Grandma's glare could pierce your skin. Christmas with these assholes again. Oh, the eggnog spiked, the tension's high, the turkey's dry as sand. But
hit that like, everybody. We're about to get started.
Just smile and lie. It's Christmas with these assholes again.
Firing on all cylinders.
The carolers sang, but Dad slammed the door. Said he's had enough of their cheer. The dog ate the ham and then threw it up. But hey, that's just this time of year. Sister Sue brought her new fling. Mom pretends to like the ring. She whispers he's just like the last 10. Christmas with his assholes again. Oh, the lights are dim, the insults fly, the pie's been burned to ash. But I'll survive just one more night. It's Christmas with these assholes again.
All right, chat room, everybody in there, whatever you're showing up on YouTube, give me a thumbs up and write some sort of comment or something along those lines. Hold on one second. I'll bring everybody in just one moment, but I want to remind you that the easy action right out of the gate is to just hit the like. Or, by the way, if we have maggot trolls here today, welcome. We need you. You're an invaluable tool. You're a wonderful rung in the ladder of climbing the algorithm. So please hit the thumbs down, if you will. Write something untoward in the chat. It's you have to understand that the big computer that runs everything over there at Google or whatever doesn't give a shit whether you like me or not. All it says is, "Wow, this asshole's engaging." So that's what it will react to. So also, if you're on Facebook, even if you like the show, a frown emoji is the best thing you can do right out in your options of what it gives you. The angry one kicks us right to the top. Zuckerberg's got anger management issues or something. It's something that comes with, I don't know, having the kind of hair he does or the lack of testosterone. I don't know, whatever he's compensating for these days in his own mind. That helps immensely. Same thing on Instagram, I'm fairly sure. Substack, you can restack me. Look at what, you know what I mean. Look out. It's it's delicious. It's okay. Don't... I call it the Benny Johnson effect. No, quit it. All right. So, sorry, I got Blue Gal. She's waiting in the wings. All right, let me bring my guest in. From the Pro Left Podcast and dear friends from Crooks and Liars. There we go. Driftglass and Blue Gal coming in. Also, do you like? Yes, welcome. These are people with multiple nicknames online, so I'm never quite sure which one, you guys operate under things. So we're going to go with these today just because I made the titles or whatever, but I'm going to rotate them going forward. So let's jump straight in. I have had an experience, as you might well know, over the last month, where my family stuff aside, which is still ongoing in its own way, as you do, I became what is in effect a low information voter. I became someone who was completely isolated from the kind of fire hose of news for a period of time by choice. And little things would slip through. Little lines, little words, little phrases that would kind of balloon, and some of it, would flow around like Hillary Benghazi, she killed everybody herself. She ordered the strike on her own people. Like that's where you get like you hear one little sliver of a sentence, you're told not to like her. Therefore, the blooming idea from those two sentences that you might have heard in the din result in you having this nutty idea about how it went. That has reversed in Trump world right now. And a lot of it is maggots, low information maggots, hearing him say things that he doesn't normally say. And that's what's slipping through. Like the affordability crisis is a Democrat hoax. It's an affordability hoax. Which he followed up, I guess, last night, and we'll be covering it tonight. They were reporting on it today. This line that he pulled out that whole, you don't need $30, maybe 2 or 3 is fine, or 5, right? He said that again.
Less pencils.
Less pencils, which is just...
Less pencils.
Yeah, like, it's the fucking 30s, right?
Yeah.
So... I titled today's show Schmaffordability because that seems to be his response to the actual circumstance. Catch me up. What the fuck is going on?
Well, I thought of you, Hal, because he went on for 2 hours. So Susie Wiles had the good, injection for him.
Yeah, she had the B vitamins and
right,
the Adderall.
We're going to give you another one.
And
right.
The benzos.
Whatever.
Yeah,
He
the
was
stuff they gave
up.
Don Draper on Mad Men.
Yeah, or Elvis in the
Yeah.
most recent Elvis movie. You get that boy on stage, right? That's
right.
Yeah, and it works.
Well,
not
and
for
I
long.
thought, Hal's going to have a long show tomorrow night.
Right, the
My
Pervitin.
immediate reaction.
The Pervitin is flowing. Right.
Yes, but this affordability thing, it does just break through because it's people's actual experience.
Right.
And he could not prevent a waitress from coming to the microphone and saying every dollar I make goes to bills at that event.
Yes.
So and this healthcare thing, Hal,
Yeah.
our health insurance premium next year, starting in January, due in 22 days,
Yeah.
is
Not me.
$2,561. Not Driftglass is on Medicare
I
as
aged
of
out.
October.
I aged
Right.
out.
He's Jake. This is for me
Right.
and for our college-age daughter. Our adult kids aren't on our program anymore, so fine. $2,561 a month
Jesus
for
Christ.
2 people.
And that's a mortgage on a house you may never own.
That's 2 of our mortgages. We live in
Right.
a low cost of living area in
Right.
southern Illinois. That's 2 mortgage payments every month.
Yeah, the absurdity of that. And again, I've said in a lot of ways that one of the problems the crust has, I've decided that we no longer have a fringe left and a fringe right. We just have a crust. They're just around the outside because they're not interested in the pizza that's reality. And so,
Right.
and there's so much overlap. Jimmy Dore is Benny Johnson. You could interchange their thumbnails. You really could.
Yeah. Oh,
They're
absolutely.
the same fucking people. So the crust thinks it's the pizza, and this is an ongoing problem. But there's an element of in what would be called like centrists and getting together and betraying the far edges of whatever, right or left, especially the right now because they should have total power. Is that there are only so many realistic ways of solving something that just aren't. It's just there is not. I mean, whatever your utopian idea of how you think it should or could be solved. In any circumstance, you're in a situation where you're the Donner Party, and you're like, "What if we bake snow
Mm-hmm.
pies?" And you're like, "Motherfucker, I'm gonna kill you," and eat you.
And eat you.
Right.
Yes.
This
is what's getting me, Hal, is these interviews on Fox, only on Fox, of Republican senators saying, we're going to need more time to work this out. And I keep replying on Blue Sky of, you have 22 days, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not going to work out that time.
22 days.
Yeah.
You've had 15 years. You've
Right.
had 15
You've had
years
15 years.
to fix this. And Donald Trump, running for president in 2016, swore up and down he had a plan. It was in the book. He was going to crank it out one day, cheap as hell, pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
And this is what we have referred to on our little podcast as the load-bearing lies. There's all the little foamy lies
Yes.
that he can just throw out and nobody cares about. There's
Right.
certain load-bearing lies, like
Yep.
the Epstein files and affordability / healthcare that you see, you either care deeply about on a mystical level, on a
Yes.
religious level, or directly affect your life. And you know he's lying because he opens his mouth and says affordability is bullshit. And you look down at what you're making and what you're spending, you know that's not true. You know
Right.
it by the math in your own home. And that's the difference. That's what's happening in MAGA. The load-bearing lies are cracking now.
Right. And it's on our side, we've known this all along. We said this all last year. We were saying, like, there's obviously an end to this runway that's a cliff, like it's Mission Impossible, except Trump is not wearing a parachute, like Tom Cruise jumping off of a motorcycle. It's just, he's got an anchor that he's like, this is my flying anchor. It's so dumb. You're just going, there is no fucking way this works. It's not going to, period. And it's not even if I like it or don't like it. It's just materially wrong. It does not fit reality. And so he was able to, I guess and I guess this would be the load-bearing lie idea, is he was able to talk these folks into, it's different with me. I'm able to magically make this work, whereas it might not have worked with other people. I know I've got the trick. I can make deals and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
There are two issues, well, there's a myriad, but two main reasons why that's a problem. One is his entire negotiating history has been based on, I have the ability to just walk away and say, fuck you. And in a private company with no shareholders and no board of directors, you can do that all the time. You can dump a project.
Your stupid sons.
Right, exactly. You can dump a project, move on to the next dumb project.
Right.
But when people's lives are on the line, it's not optional. You have to have some kind of a solution, even if it's not your optimal one, even if your one doesn't work. You can't walk away and leave people with $3,000 insurance premiums every month, and all the other stuff that, never mind the fact that the ACA, they've been removing tires and saying, hey, it doesn't roll this entire time. The only solution they're going to have is to put all of it back in. The individual mandate is what kept the prices down. And they know this. They know this from the Massachusetts standard. Like, they
from
know
Romney carrot to begin with.
Right. That's why it actually worked. It was something everybody could meet in the middle on and pass, and it was functional. It helped. So the question is, I mean, obviously he'll have a solution in 2 weeks. I don't know why we're even doubting him, but
he's only got 22 days. 2 weeks.
Will fix this.
Yes, tariffs are going to pay, and we're not even going to have an income tax anymore.
No,
ever. We're just going to have it around for fun. We're just going to have an income tax.
So I have a quick question for you, Hal. I have a quick question for you. One of the things I've noticed about MAGA, the MAGA cult in particular, that crusty cult, is that they genuinely think Trump cares about them.
Right.
They genuinely think Trump is their daddy who loves them. He may be an abusive daddy, but he cares about them.
Right.
And that, particularly with his mental capacity going, seems to be evaporating from the image that he's projecting on television.
Mm-hmm. Well, they are.
What do you think is going to happen there?
Well, okay. So first of all, there's about 9 to 12% of the right-wing electorate that only showed up for Trump and is going to go away the minute he's gone, or they have lost faith in him. So that window of people, even if everybody with an R on their shirt shows up, and as usual, 2/3 of the people with a D on their shirt show up, by the numbers, Republicans are fucked next time, even in districts they think they've gerrymandered into existence. That doesn't guarantee, because they've split a district, and if the trends go in another direction, they might find that the independents identifying in these new 2 districts that they split up, like a black district or a highly Democratic district, weakening the vote, might actually grow the vote.
We had a blue wave last night.
Right.
I'm gonna blue wave last night.
Yeah, I'm going to point that out in just a second. The phrase today was like alarm bells, right? For the
alarm bells, yes.
Okay, that's been ringing for a while since the Epstein memo, and and did you ever see the movie Burglar, the Whoopi Goldberg film? I love it. It's one of my favorite. It's it's her Bobcat Goldthwait. Just one of my 80s detective thief comedies or whatever. But there's a point where she's got her apartment, because she's a thief, rigged against theft because she knows all the tricks. And one point, a guy steps on a rug in her place, and an alarm bell starts going off. And they cut to like an hour later, and the cops have had to take drywall off the wall. There's all these wires cut, and the thing is still ringing, and everybody is walking around doing like this. And they finally, the guy goes snap, and it turns off, and they all go, I've never seen anything like this in my life. Like they walk out of the place. That's what's happening with the Republicans. Every wire they cut, they're like, oh, we'll cut this wire, and that'll turn the alarm off. It's fine. And it doesn't. It keeps going and it keeps going. And in this particular instance, Marjorie Taylor Greene is sort of the bellwether in this. She's the canary in the coal mine. That largely comes because she had predicated her personal identity on the Epstein files being released. Trump was what people didn't realize was that she was, like obviously, inflating him into this grandiose biblical character while she talked about him, but only because she was a warrior for the children. And by helping him, she was part of God's prophecy, not he's God's prophecy and she gets to sit back and watch him throw a snake, a staff on the ground and turns into a snake. She's the,
He was their Cyrus. He was their king, their flawed leader who would nonetheless serve the Lord and serve Marjorie Taylor Greene's agenda.
Right.
Right. And she's the chosen people. And her identity was predicated on this, I'm going to be responsible for getting the guy in there and getting the administration in there and helping them do anything they fucking need to do, even if it's January 6th, to stop the big pedophile brigade. And then when this didn't happen, and when it was an obvious fuck you, and they released that memo in July, that was the turning point. Like, you look at all the polling where this is still nervous, wait and see, but they were definitely still supporting him, even though shit was clearly not working. He was tacoing all the time through June. But when they put out that one letter, and not unsigned, and then Trump followed it up, the next day or 2 days later, I think it was on the Monday, with I don't even need your fucking help if you don't I never need you suckers and losers kind of idea. And you had even Charlie Kirk at the time going, yeah, this is not going to work, and his own people. And he tried to I'm not going to talk about it anymore.
I know.
And then the next day he was talking about it because his entire feed, his audience, the maggots, the deep subset of a subset of a subset, the people who believe this, who go online and believe this, who go and believe in this and talk in chat rooms, who are firebrands, who are always there. That's a needle point, an example of who's out there. That group was like, fuck you. Yeah. It was huge. It was a huge response. And it hasn't changed. That's all the other stuff where they're starting to doubt his tariffs. They're starting to doubt the affordability stuff, where they're starting to get mad and freaked out, is all tied to that memo and his response to that memo. And maybe his brain turning to jam right in front of them. Maybe the falling asleep and the, and the obvious sundowning where he's, up all night and sleep all day, like he's in the band Slaughter.
He's got no filter anymore at all, and there's no filter left anymore. And since you're pulling movie references, I'm going to pull out A Face in the Crowd, Andy Griffith, the last scene where in front of an open microphone he says the thing you're never supposed to say. He calls his followers rubes and idiots, and I've got these people sewed up, and I can do whatever I want with them. And that's when it breaks. Now, that's happening in slow motion for Trump, because it's not a movie, it's real life. But what I've noticed, and see if you've noticed this too, a lot of the people who still want to believe that he's the man are displacing their rage onto Mike Johnson. It's all Mike Johnson's fault. Mike Johnson's the monster, because they can't say Daddy did it. They can't say Daddy's the abuser, because that's impossible. That breaks their brain. So there must be, again, when you're MAGA, there must be a larger conspiracy to contain the smaller conspiracy that just fell apart. And the larger conspiracy is Mike Johnson doesn't like women. Mike Johnson is the one standing in the way of all this stuff in Congress. If only Mike Johnson were to get the hell out of the way, we could have everything we'd ever wanted.
Right.
Now, not a lot of people are buying that, but enough people are. Elise Stefanik is about to blow up even what's her name? Nancy Mace.
Right.
Sniffing around the exits looking for, and their excuse is Mike Johnson hates ladies. Mike Johnson hates women. And You know,
Mhm.
that's
Both
an
of those women are running for governors of their states too.
Right.
So they've got to get their name separated from the fail that's coming.
Right.
without
Yeah.
implicating, without saying Trump is a monster and I was
Right.
horribly wrong, which you're never allowed to do. They've got to be able to give an excuse for why they're leaving their
Right.
post and going someplace else.
And
you
why
can
their
just
party's
hear-
losing and they should win.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well,
It wasn't their fault.
but the problem is they have two sales pitches. One is Trumpism would work if only it was allowed to just go uncontrolled. If you just take the reins off and let it fly, it's the old sale of free market economies. If we had no rules about sales of anything, including babies and nuclear weapons on the open market, if we just step back and let the market would settle itself out in this regard, that people, if you wouldn't even have to give restaurants grades anymore, because after a couple of people died, nobody would eat there anymore, and the market would settle itself. It's just fucking stupid. And
You know that conservatism cannot fail. Conservatism can only be failed.
right.
You know, MAGA
you
cannot fail.
It's the same argument on the other part of the crust, which is true communism's never been tried. Instead of it always devolves into exactly what it becomes, not that the only way it will ever be tried is if we get to Star Trek, and even Marx, I think, admitted that you build communism on top of when capitalism has solved all the problems, then it will bubble forward. Well, then you don't have to work towards it. It'll just happen naturally. So what the fuck are you even bothering with a revolution for? The revolution will come with advancement. So get the fuck out of the way of the advancement. Go all in on capitalism, if that's the fucking argument. It's just fucking stupid. But, and by the way, he was a big fan of the N-word, and the only thing he could come up with to call Jews that was worse than, the words he had for them was the N-word. So, again, crusty people doing crusty shit. But this argument that if you just let it go, if it just had a chance to just run wild, it would work. And it never does, because it's silly. Because the reality is that everything is a mix. The short-term solutions that you have to make that are imperfect or whatever, for the long-term ones that take some building, and you've got to put you're climbing a ladder, attaching each rung as you go along in life. Whether you're raising kids, losing weight, learning a language, or building a business, it's the same thing. It's reality. It's gravity.
ACA,
yes,
the ACA was a stepping stone towards single payer or whatever you want. Before Social Security, Roosevelt had a system that was designed to be temporary, that was supposed to lead to Social Security, and it did. And a bunch of right-wing nut jobs back in 2005, 2006 went back to that system and said, "See, it failed."
Right.
That's why things are awful. Like, no. This is a continuum, and we're at step 3 of a 30-step process. And if you follow the process, we get there eventually.
And ACA is now polling at 75%, and single payer is now over 50.
Well, that's the part. Okay, so that's the part that's scaring Glenn Beck and that crowd, because they all looked at that poll about a socialist-leaning president next time around. They would look forward to it. Even a Democrat, and that panicked them. That was about a month ago. Then when those polling came out, and that was like, what? MAGA wants a communist, blah blah blah. Like, that's where they went, because they can only think in extremes. Also, Melissa, I see you there in the background. I'll get you at the top of the hour. You're welcome to hang out, or if you want to dial back in, if that's all right. Whatever you would like. I can hear you and you can hear me. You're all good? Hello. Excellent. Okay, good. All right. I just don't want you to feel like I don't see you there. So, amazing story, by the way, that Melissa and David Schuster have broken about the boat strikes, and so I want to.
Wow.
Yeah. So she's going to dial in and talk to us about that, because there's a lot of footage that's going to be coming out, because oversight still happens whether they like it or not. Yep.
Finally, they're using their, constitutional.
Yes. Well, we'll get. Okay. Let's.
Strings. Yes.
Yes. We'll get to that part in 3 minutes, because we can shift gears at the half hour and try to keep ourselves on one particular topic. Because I will say that the affordability crisis part of it as that that load-bearing lie, the structural lies, the girders of bullshit that Trump has that, by the way, are losing. I was about to say erected, but they've clearly lost their erection over the last little bit. The director set that he is using to, I don't know where I'm going with this, but the point being is that he sold this idea, and that their identity was based on joining him in this fight. That there are so many egomaniacs on the right that are like, it's not that I stand behind Trump and he is my leader. It's that I am the leader because I saw that he is the guy who can, I can put a chain around his neck and he's my pit bull. And that was a big chunk of these folks as well. Especially, by the way, Charlie Kirk, or even at the early part of it, Tucker Carlson, that crowd, and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Chip Roy and all the people in the Freedom Caucus who were really fucking loud this time last year and are really fucking quiet right now. If they're not leaving, they haven't said shit. It's amazing. Like, think of all the people.
All the way down.
Right.
All the way down to the farmers here in Southern Illinois.
Right.
Gotten real quiet.
Yeah, exactly. There's and I think this is an approach that Democrats, and this is the Tennessee versus the Georgia thing. So let's look at the Georgia case right now. Let's see if I can move this over here so I can show this. So this is the story this morning. Alarm bells. Democrats supercharged after shock upset in deep red Georgia seat. This is Eric Gisler won. It was a special election for a state house. And state houses, you take them with a grain of salt, but they are more indicative, I would argue, than even Mamdani as a mayor of a blue city, because it's not linked to the, even as big as New York is, the sort of how the federal dollars flow to the whole state, the way the state reps do. So, and usually state rep, if you look at Obama's rise, is how you tee up to federal office, and you see the direction of people who are able to get elected across districts, then their state, then, or their broader district, and then there. So a lot of times this is the primary. And I want people to remember that. If you really care about people who are going to run and operate, running them for a state seat that overlaps with the representative seat in the Congress is one of the ways that you do the real primary, because the name recognition for the people who actually do shit, that actually accomplish things for their constituents, starts in the state house. And most of us, don't know who our state rep is a lot of times, but in red states especially, and a bunch of these other places, they're not that big. There's not a lot of people, so they do a shit ton of glad handing. And so this is how the ladder is clearer in a small state comparatively to like California or Texas or Florida, Georgia or Utah or any of these other places. There's a real direct line of the leadership, the establishment, because they have established that they can get in there and do something and either show for their district or show for their, their donors, whichever is more important to the people in that zone, and work their way up the chain. And so the fact that this special election, that Trump won by double digits, I think it was 12 points, 12, that he won by double digits last year, and then like this guy, Marcus Whitehour, I love this, resigned in late October to focus on his role at a real estate company. Right. Because he doesn't have a family to spend more time with in whatever. Right. You're right. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And you go, okay, this is the state house that the Democrats flipped last night isn't the party's juiciest midterm target. It isn't even in the top 10, but Eric Gisler's stunning special election victory sounded alarm bells for Republicans and supercharged Democrats. This is, coming in with, getting a 2-digit lead down to a 1-digit lead in Tennessee, for example, which was a big part of this. And by the way, had Democrats in that area run and hold on, somewhat grip something, a centrist Democrat or a center-left Democrat, they'd have fucking won.
Yep.
They would have won the seat. And that person, while they might not have given the extra 10%, of what they think Mamdani's going to provide or what have you, and this magical window of if we only had that tipping point, if they ran somebody that was a little closer to the voters of the area,
right,
a Democrat would get elected. And so, and I've been saying this, you guys know, and I will keep saying this until I get to say it to every asshole who's put us in this situation where Donald Trump was able to define the Supreme Court for a generation. The DNC has one job. One fucking job. Red district's purple, purple district's blue. Nobody gets any points for getting a blue district bluer. None. It's silly. It's a waste of money and time. It's fucking dumb. The voters themselves will push that person in that direction over time if indeed they want it. But you cannot turn a red district like deep, dark blue magically. It's not going to happen. And they're going to reject it, and you're going to end up with a maggot because that's all the Republicans are running. And you will you'll not only just guarantee a red seat, you will guarantee a Freedom Caucasian type of seat to it. Because that's what you're up against. It's not as if you're up against a moderate Republican in any of these circumstances. Because they're not allowed to do that. They're making the same mistake.
Yeah. Well, as long as you're talking to everybody, as long as you're talking to the universe of people who have bad opinions, would you please tell those same people, stop talking about the Democratic Party as an entity, single monolithic entity. Democrats must do this, or Democrats must do that, or Democrats must believe this, or they must. No. The Democratic Party, because we're Democrats, we know Democratic Party is a very large tent full of weirdos and goof-offs and wonderful people and saints and sinners and so forth. And there is no one formula for Democrats to win everywhere.
Right.
And this idea that, I'm hearing from our allies in the Never Trump movement, the Democrats should pick an issue to run against their party on. Just pick something that will make people like me furious, because that'll get the voters in. That'll get them centrist voters in. Like, no. Pick an issue that's close to where you live.
That's right. Yes.
In Springfield right now, we have a massive medical community, a whole medical district. It's half the jobs in this area. Pick single payer. Pick affordability. Our optometrist was talking about single payer off book. I mean, our doctor talks. This is a real issue for people here. But it wouldn't play here. Something else. Some climate change probably wouldn't tip the scale, but that would. So you got to pick the right issue for the place where you live, and then form an alliance, just like Obama did when he was in the State House, with all the other Democrats who you can get on board and get things done.
Right. And then so I've been spending, the last month in Kentucky. It's where I'm originally from. It's where, they've got, two senators. One is like an aging oligarch with ties to the Russians who got an aluminum plant there. And, as if that's the primary, like, think of Kentucky and think of like, oh yeah, aluminum. It's like, what the fuck are you even doing? Do you even know your goddamn state? And then the other one's a carpetbagger. Rand Paul is not a Kentuckian. He never will be. He's never experienced Kentucky. He lives like anybody who would move to fucking Louisville or Lexington and buy a McMansion and never run into anybody else that's even lived anywhere near. I grew up in Peaksmill, Kentucky, folks. The living room of my house was the primary room in the entire house, and it was a log cabin that was used as a church for black soldiers that were fighting on the side of the North in the Civil War. That's the house I lived in. We got our water from the fucking creek when we ran out. So get fucked with this. Rand Paul has any idea, or McConnell has any idea how Kentuckians live. And and that's where we've got a Democratic governor in Kentucky. There is a chance. There is a chance.
Who ran on healthcare.
Right. Exactly. And the issue is, here's how I would run on the public option. It's as simple as this. You like the fact that we have public schools and private schools? You like the fact that we have police officers, but you could hire private security if you want to. You like the idea that you have, no matter what happens or who you are, the fire department comes if your house is on fire. But if you want to fill your house with a full sprinkler system and a special system, a halon system, you could absolutely pay to have that done yourself. You like both those options? Right now, you only have one in healthcare. That makes no sense. And if competition is great, then why don't insurance companies have to compete the way private schools have to compete? The quality of private schools is as great as it is because it has to be. Because the baseline of public school keeps getting higher and higher. And all these people like, everybody who says public schools churn out, robots who are only made to work in factories and that was the goal of it, or just as on the right, or just as stupid as the fucking people who say that police in the United States are based on, slave catchers of the 1800s. Like, get the fuck out of here. What are they doing right now? What are any of them
Right.
doing right now? They're either doing their job or they're not. Now, why are they doing their job or they aren't? Because the leadership matters. Who you vote into office. ICE wasn't a problem under Biden. It wasn't a problem under Obama because it's the leadership. And that's what you sell it on. There is no reason, if we have public schools and private schools, public, police and private security, you can, if you want to pave and asphalt your fucking driveway out to your farm, that's fine. But all the roads are paved by the city. You have that option, right?
That is the system they have in Australia. We've been talking with our friend at the Bill Show in Australia. He's an expat.
Right.
And everybody's covered baseline. If you get cancer, you're covered.
Right.
And if you want to buy dental and optical and extra private room insurance, so you have a private room at the hospital, so you have concierge care, you go out and buy it.
Right. That's it. It seems logical. And it seems like, one of the things that MAGA is built on, it seems, is a hierarchy, meritocracy standard. Now, I know that that's all a farce because Mike Johnson, they made him Speaker of the House, and he comes from the state that's like 50th in everything except cancer clusters. So the idea that he, that's the fucking dude. It's the same thing with McConnell or whatever. Like, there's an element of, like it or not, Schumer represents New York, which arguably is the economic engine, junction of the United States. So in terms of the Democrats, whether you like him or not, he's a pivot point for the entire economy. So if it dips a little, he catches shit because the rest of the country dips a lot. It's that whole thing, if New York gets a cold, the center of the country gets the flu. And
I have to keep explaining to my kids that Schumer being pro-pot legalization, his pot legalization bill is a banking bill. It's not a pot bill.
Right.
It's to help the banks.
Right. But it's
get all that money.
But there's also
cash those checks.
Right. And that there is no there without the other. There is no way to do that legalization thing without. And if you don't believe me, look at how the right regards how they impacted the banking sector in terms of OnlyFans or that kind of stuff, or people who do online porn. They were attacking the money there, and they were saying their freedom's being attacked because if they advocated terrorism, banks would go fuck you and not let their channel
demonetize them.
They demonetize them. Same thing. So you don't. There is no way to legalization of pot without an infrastructure where the banks have to recognize these things, because in states they won't. You might be able to talk Citibank and Wells Fargo into it because they're nationwide now, but there's a bank in Kentucky called the Fifth Third Bank, which is so weird. It's just a 5/3 bank. Yeah, it's such an odd name.
Those,
but it's basically just like northern Kentucky and a little bit of southern Ohio. The people who run that bank or whatever are clued into every industry, horsing, all this kind of stuff. Shit ton of money flows through there. They're not pro legalization, and if you leave it up to them, they won't do it. Right. They'll go, it's welcome everywhere but here. And then they'll call their buddy who runs the other bank in northern Tennessee, who goes to another branch of their church, and say, don't do it either, and we'll choke this out. Even if the government says it's okay, we don't have to participate in it. And you have a situation of people who don't want to bake cakes for gay people, but ultimately because they own the bank, since you've already set a law that they don't have to do business with certain groups because they disagree with their politics, you have the right to do that. You have freedom of speech as the owner of the company. You could do this too. And that's why he has to do that. Now, again, creates a gripiness within the Democratic parties that is an immaterial point. We don't even need to be arguing that part of it. Like, the part we have to argue is the people we're up against are trying to guarantee that people not only don't have the subsidies for healthcare, but never get to a public option for fear that it leads to a national health service kind of situation. But their followers, their crowd, are slowly limping towards that thing. So that's and to your point, that's a winning crossover issue. You're not going to agree
Right.
with them on whether women should be trad wives or be able to work. You're never, as long as
No.
the laws are there, I don't give a fuck what they say. I don't care if
Right.
they're respectful of somebody's pronouns, as long as they can't get them fired for being trans. It doesn't matter ultimately. We had this issue with racism in the fucking 60s and early 70s.
Yes, we did.
As long as people have legal protections, that's got to be our point. That's got to be our goal. We want to make sure that they're legally protected. The social stuff will have to work itself out socially as it does.
Yeah.
But when it comes to this, we're never going to convince them on a myriad of issues. But they're getting very close to understanding that if you have public schools and private schools, you should have a public option and a private option for health insurance, because it's just a big, like pool of money to pay out to who gets sick early, and then you got Social Security for what bubbles past that.
Which really puzzles me about the Republican Party
Right.
and healthcare pushing for health savings accounts, which are incredibly complicated for an individual to administer.
Mm-hmm.
And usually the Republicans are so good at making real simple statements about killing babies or socialism or whatever. Their solutions to healthcare are so complicated. And what you just said about public option is so easy to understand.
Yes. That's all they have to say. Democrats, all you have to say everywhere is go, look, I know you guys think that we're trying to start an NHS or whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. People should just have the right to have health insurance from a source that isn't profit driven at all, and it's just concerned with their care. And then the profit driven ones will have to compete. They'll either have to give amazing quality in comparison for a closer price to that, or they're going to have to, go out of business. Right, exactly. Find another business if they want to make that kind of profit. Get into the optional care situation as opposed to the necessary stuff.
I want 12 abortions a month. I'm going to have to pay for that.
Yeah, right. And so I think Democrats, all they have to do is go, look, we need a public option because we have it in every other situation and it works just fine. If you want to send your kids to a better school, or even if you want to fucking homeschool them, you can. But you've got public schools that guarantee a certain quality of education no matter what, everywhere. Right. And the same thing should be true of something permanently necessary like healthcare. Right. We're not talking about optional shit. We're not talking about veneers and fake tits. We're talking about
facelifts and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. We're talking about the single biggest reason people used to go bankrupt in this country. And it's out of their control. And if you want to, set terms for lifestyle diseases and all that kind of stuff or whatever.
Yeah. Mar-a-Lago face is going to cost you extra.
Right. Exactly. Right. And again, you could put stuff in that if you're going to continue to smoke or you're going to continue to do this or whatever in your checkups, and we see that you're doing this, your premium will be slightly higher in the public option part of it because you're putting more risk into the pool. But still within a margin, right? Still within the margin.
Seriously.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yes. If you have guns in your home and you don't want to show whether they're secure or not, then that'll slightly rise.
That's my answer to private insurance too. Is we're gonna make you insure your guns the way you insure your car.
Yeah. Right.
And so insurance companies are going to have a whole lot of opportunity to capture markets in private insurance, and insurance companies. I'm sorry, I'm getting off topic. Insurance companies are going to come into your home and make sure you have a gun safe.
Right. Yeah.
Like a smoke alarm or anything else.
Like a smoke alarm.
I got to quibble with my beautiful wife on one issue, and that's the complexity of health savings accounts. Because as you know, the people that's designed to be a sop to have no interest in details at all. It's like death panels. Don't read the bill. Don't read the original ACA was like, don't read the bill. It's 2,000 pages long. Let me tell you what's in it. And it's death panels because that black man wants to kill your sainted white grandma, and you shouldn't like that. And it's socialism. It's communism. Right. And that was good enough for the proto MAGA crowd, the Tea Party crowd. We're all the same people, frankly. So it is just a distraction. These are all just distractions. And if you want to run the Affordable Care Act campaign all over again, I say do it. Obama was a great salesman for the ACA.
Yep.
Get
to that's the difference now is people are familiar with ACA enough to know how much it helps them.
And to know that it was a lie, that the death panel part was a lie.
It was a
lie. You can quit your job and take your insurance with you. There's all kinds of, there's no more
start your own business.
Yeah. You have no lifetime caps, all the things that used to terrify you. Those fears have all been taken away. Now, it's a deeply imperfect system that lacks an affordable public option because of people like Joe Lieberman, who knifed us in the back at the last minute. But that sales pitch is still quite valid. And it's even more so now that people have had a chance to soak in this for 15 years and realize this is actually better than it was. It could be a lot better.
The health savings account thing, the argument, this health savings account thing is dovetailing with that affordability lie.
Right.
Because, we're going to put $2,000 in your health savings account for you. That pays for 21 days of coverage for me.
Well, again,
right.
That's like saying tort reform. If we just had tort reform, things would be solved. No, bullshit.
Selling across state lines.
They used to sell it that way. Well, okay, and to that point, that if you're selling the ACA now, one of the things you do is, hey, remember all that shit about death panels and all that nonsense that they sold you? None of that turned out. It just made it so that people could afford insurance and that people could keep their kids on it till they were 27 so they could finish even a PhD or stay in the home caring for an elderly parent. If there's a 3-generational house where somebody's really old, then the kid is taking care of the parent while they're living there and going to school or starting their business or starting their job out of the garage or whatever it is. They had that option. They don't have to worry about, scrapping and finding a job with Benny's in a place where there is none so that they can have insurance. And it didn't happen. The biggest one is, and it's not because they stopped it. There was no magic bill from the Republicans. It was anti-death penalties. It just wasn't in there. It was a lie. These people lied to you last time, and they're lying to you now. It's the same people who sold you death panels, and we all know now, after it's been in effect for years, it has helped millions of people, and by helping those millions of people, millions of more people, the people who were able to stave off bankruptcy in the initial who could get it, but just having insurance all this time saved myriads of lives and could expand to do that. The issue that they have is that the cost of them will rise because it's still within entirely the private market, and the expectation of care and the technology and the new drugs that are available initially, especially when they're cuspy, they're just brand new, are more expensive. And then those treatments have to be available because you can't let ethically somebody die on that. So the price of those things, what if you might need them, is baked into the actuarials. But if you have a public option where, because of Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, you can start negotiating for insulin like Biden set up, then you're guaranteeing that if you get, a mass group of people still get diabetes, not only can you negotiate it, the price is cheaper, but it's cheaper for the public option because we know how far out we can go. Okay, if they get diabetes in 10 years, the insulin costs are still going to be the same they are today.
Right.
And this is the public versus private part, I think, is the only thing you got to hammer. It's the simplest, most direct explanation. We got public schools and private schools. It works just fine. If you can't afford private school, not having public school is a fucking nightmare for everybody. We'd have a bunch of people running through stop signs because they can't read or they don't understand, their critical thinking at all. They were all homeschooled by religious types who, think that, the Lord's going to be here any afternoon. Right. So, so that's it. Public school, private school, public option, private option. We're not going to get rid of private insurance if you want it or you trust it or you think it's better, but you can pay into it. And they will have to compete with a public version, just like Medicare Part D and all that shit wouldn't exist but for Medicare. And that's an entire industry that they love, that they profit off of, but wouldn't exist. No one would be able to afford it if they didn't have the jump start from Medicare.
And there was one person who predicted all this, and it wasn't me.
No, sorry.
It was Bill Kristol.
Right.
I believe it was Bill Kristol who said way back when he was deadly opposed to this, which was, if you let this thing pass, people will get used to it and they'll like it. And you'll never be able to take it away from them because people like when things get better in their lives. So that's why I have to kill it in the cradle.
That's a bad thing, right?
Yeah, that's right. It'll work. The problem with it is it'll work. Right.
Yeah, and people will start to trust government to do things that work, and we can't have that as Republicans. And so we have to kill it in the cradle. And it survived. It survived its first 15 years. Now it's a teenager, and it's surly, and would like more stuff.
We're this
close. People who are being hurt by these exploding premiums, the critical mass of them are women who have left the workplace to care for elderly parents.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and I would argue there's a ton of like ancillary impacts to that. So one of the things I've been talking about lately is sort of like how Democrats need to address crime. Instead of focusing on the race of the incarcerated, focus on the race of the victims. Because I can tell your system is not determined. The racism in an area is not determined by how many people of color are in jail, but how many people of color are victimized, can't go on with their lives. These are the innocent people in this situation. The rape victims, the theft victims, the people who've been, had their house shut up and that kind of stuff are usually 9-1 to the incarcerated. And that's the number should always be focused on bringing down, because these are the people that want to just get on with their lives. And if you if you just think, well, we could take a murderer and release him back into the neighborhood because he'll fit right in. We'll release him early and then he'll become a normal neighbor again. You basically are saying that's the kind of neighborhood it is. I mean, they're basically a bunch of criminals. They can absorb him back in, which is horseshit. You don't do it in any other community. No other community expects it or accepts it. Like, it's stupid. We watch myriads of true crime shit about like watching white people get put away. Bundy, Gacy, the Murdochs, whatever. Like it is a prurient. And it's like, send that fucker away forever. Like making a murderer. It's all about like rounding up serial killers and white trash and making sure they go to jail and stay there forever.
They should do a show called Middle Name Wayne.
There's don't get me started on him, because he's one of my prime examples of like how releasing people early is a terrible idea, because he got let out after 18 months for sodomizing a 15-year-old boy. He had 8 years. If he'd have stayed and just done his time, all of his victims would still be alive. So that's why you do it. All right, then.
Yeah.
And again, I'm against the death penalty, because you can undo somebody being in jail for 25 years. You cannot nobody gets paroled from a cemetery, and that includes victims. So at some point, that's the standard. Okay, by the way, I want to remind everybody, Driftglass and Blue Gal have the Professional Left podcast. If you go to professionalleft.blogspot.com or just look up The Professional Left, that will bring you to their podcast. What's your episode frequency? What are you doing? What's your current schedule?
Twice a week. We're at episode 952.
Look at you.
We're closing in on 1,000. Yeah.
This January, we will have been doing this for 16 years.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So, and we've both been bloggers for 21 years. So,
Well, now you're bragging.
I know.
way to dig in. And let's see, my show on CPT's been around for 15 years now, which is amazing to me.
Yeah.
And that means I started on Steph's show right about that time, because it was about 3 years into me doing Hump Days with Hal that I started doing, the CPT asked me to do a daily show, and I said, no. And then how about weekends? So I go, okay.
And I was living in Chicago at the time, wandering around trying to catch the CPT signal at the time with my little radio, because I love those shows. Those were awesome. Those were great.
Yeah. And
Driftglass visited their studio last year.
I did.
And got a free T-shirt. That was on a Saturday. Came in and
they're going to talk to you guys.
We're coming back to Chicago in March. We'll have to talk to you about that.
Yes, because I'll if I'm available, I'll meet up with you, and we can do an in studio there and all that kind of stuff. I'm trying to get back back to Chicago more and more.
And the weekend guys are both Columbia College students, and I used to run a department there. I used to teach there, so I'm sure I threw you guys out of a lab at one point.
Oh, that's sweet. I studied audio engineering with Kimo Williams, who was one of the music teachers in audio. Yeah. I took private lessons from him because I didn't go to Columbia because, but one of my best friends, Tom, he went to Columbia and knew him or whatever. And I was like, I'll pay for classes for us so we can make our own albums. So we went and recorded and studied at his studio, literally just in this great old studio he's got on the west side. Yeah. So, again, private education and public education happening.
Yeah, right.
Right here.
Right here, right now. So the key will be, our message for Democrats. Mine is red districts purple, purple districts blue. And for the public option, you got a public option in everything else. Why not insurance? We're not building hospitals. It's not government hospitals. It's not government doctors. It's just that. What would you say is your key phrase? And then I'll bring in Melissa Corrigan in just one moment because she's back.
Yeah,
it's terrific. What would be the like your if you could bumper sticker one of these things, you know?
We have a couple bumper stickers.
Great,
One of
do
them
it.
is both sides don't.
Yes.
Both sides don't do this, and the both siders, and we've been really successful with
Yes.
that. And Driftflesh, you want to talk about the one that's on the water?
Burn the lifeboats.
Burn the
Burn the
lifeboats.
lifeboats.
Yes, right.
No
Nobody
rebranding
gets-
for Republican
Nobody
lawmakers.
gets back. No, you don't get to rebrand the Republican Party again for like the 15th time in a row. No.
Yep.
You're not going to do the Tea Party thing again. You're not going to do that. No, you were on with Trump. You voted for Trump 3 times. You are
Yeah.
dead to me.
Yeah, you're in it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
You
hang
cash all
that
those
on them.
checks.
Hang that on them as much as you would hang, like we should have had a public option in the ACA in the first place, even though the public wasn't there yet. I would argue, by the way, in my way out the door, is that one of the reasons we didn't have a public option was partially because of, quote, the blue dogs and people like Joe Lieberman knifing them. But we had not convinced the public yet. And you weren't going to do it until you had a pilot of it anyways with a lot of folks if they didn't already live in Massachusetts or Washington State.
That's
so
fair. That's
our
fair.
job, just like gay marriage, Obama was for, civil unions because the public
Biden
hasn't there
looked
yet.
into that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
And that was
yeah.
the thing because they were all obviously it's okay to be married. You can call it whatever the fuck you want. What's wrong with you?
Right.
It's a freedom of speech issue. But he was like, the public isn't there yet. We'll get them to civil unions. That's leadership. I might be ahead of you on it, but if I get too far ahead, you guys are lost in the fucking woods, or you might break apart. So the leadership isn't just running into the fray. It's also standing within, the sight of the people you are leading, so that they know where they're going, and that you're following. There might be a little bit of subterfuge or Machiavellianism necessary no matter what it was. And clearly that's what it was. And Biden doesn't have that nerve. So he was just like, of course I'm for gay marriage. It's fucking stupid. I'm a pro-life Catholic, but
Really
people should have the
great.
right to abortion and they should be able to get married. What are you, dumb? Right? And they're like, shh, we're running against Republicans, and it might scare people into it. So we got to know where the voter is.
Yep.
Go where the voter is, and then convince them. We don't need fighters. We need salespeople. We need debaters. We need people who can argue. This idea that we need fighters is just fucking dumb because it becomes a proxy fight with the voters where they think you're the enemy. That's what fighting is.
The huge part of Eileen Higgins winning Miami mayor last night. She rode public transportation in Miami.
Right.
Same with Mom Bonet. It was the same thing. I'm one of you. I'm suffering along with you.
Right.
I want to fix this.
That's how Biden ultimately became president.
Yeah.
Don't confuse fighting with passionate debating.
Yes.
They're very different things.
Yeah.
If you're passionate and you show your passion and you show that you know what you're talking about and you bring receipts, don't complicate it, but show that you're passionate and you believe. That's not punching out someone. That is desperately trying to convince them to save their own lives.
That's right. Your argument wants to win so that you can help them as well, and that's part of what we got to do. All right. I appreciate
One last
you guys
thing I want to say is that the DLCC has a brand new map out this morning with a lot more of the
targets,
competitive races in the state houses.
Because a lot
of them
are
going to make a big difference for abortion rights in these states.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Here we go.
And that's what you have to fight on. And again, we've got freedom on our side. We've got the public infrastructure argument on our side, and we just need to hit that with everything we got. All right, thank you guys so much for being on. I love you guys. It's a pleasure, and you're just wonderful.
Well, we love you back.
All right, and I will. We'll talk again, both on screen and in private, and catch up and all that kind of stuff very soon. And hopefully, we can do that thing in Chicago. That would be lovely. I want to do.
I'll send Andrea. I'll send Andrea the dates on that.
We'll do a big Sparks Fest, and I'll have all the regulars. We'll get the Dublins and the Devlins and the Boston Bryans in Chicago, and we'll gather them all. I'm for it. All right. Much love, and I'll see you guys later.
We'll make a special trip for that.
Yeah. Okay. Bye. There they go. All right. Now I've just got to, and by the way, chat room, I'm going to bring in just 1 second. Let me get, let me change my little titles and all that stuff that I have to do to bring in Melissa. And this is my first time. Oops, I think it's hold on. It's 1L. Yes, it is. Okay, good. Melissa Corrigan, waiting in the wings. And yeah. And there is, let's see, bring this down. There you go. Put it here. And inserting here. And then I'll bring you in. in just 1 second. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Oh, I'm going to move this down so it's not in your face. Melissa Corrigan, welcome. Whoops, hold on. There you go. Go back to this one. I'm going to bring you in this. There you are. Hi. Sorry. I had so many buttons to push. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. My dear friend Cliff Schechter took me out for coffee when my dad passed. About a week ago, we got together after, and one of the things he crowed about immediately after we had talked about the myriad of issues that he helped me distract myself from what was going on by getting back into the political talk, and he brought up the fact that you and David Schuster have recently sort of broken a story about the Venezuelan boat strikes and the details around that are kind of bubbling to the surface. And I don't know if you guys have an opinion about the political ramifications, whether Hegseth will have to pay for this in any way unless without Democrats coming in power and doing it themselves or being fired. But tell everybody sort of, I think most people are familiar, there's been about 9 strikes. The news was out that there was a second strike on a boat which had 2 survivors, killing them. Your story went even beyond that. So if you give us the encapsulated version, then we'll talk about the details of it and the like.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I'd be remiss if I didn't say hello to my kids. My kids are super supportive of my work, but today, especially, they found out that Hal Sparks was, and I believe they referred to you as Mr. Davenport, I think was what they...
Yes, that's right. That's right. So obviously, they were raised well. Right.
Right. Yeah, I'm super excited to be here to continue amplifying this story. I myself am a Navy veteran, and so I have connections still with veterans and active duty, and I have some sources in the DoD and beyond. And on October 20th, late at night, I got a secret or a secure message, and they dropped a document that really blew my mind. And so it took me 47 days to get that document onto a senator's desk. I used super cool veterans. It was sort of a mission that we all went on together to get that document where it needed to be before we went public with anything. And once the document was with the Armed Services Committee, and once the sources had legal representation, and only when they were comfortable did we go ahead and talk about this publicly. So what happened was there was a boat strike, and there were 2 survivors, and those survivors were picked up and brought on board the USS Iwo Jima. And there is standing shipboard protocol that when you bring anyone out of the water, a lot of ships vary in what this protocol says. It can be a shipwreck survivor, anyone, but typically across the board, anytime you pull someone out of the water and pull them onto a boat, you are going to document that. You're going to have video documentation. So shipboard personnel headed down to begin that video documentation. And immediately right on the deck, there was a conflict where Marine personnel pushed back and said the order had come down from the Commodore that there was to be no video. There was a little bit of back and forth, and ultimately the PAO, that's the press affairs officer on board the ship, went ahead and ordered that the video be taken. So video documentation was taken of the onboarding. There were cameras set up in the med bay. One of the detainees was in bad medical shape. Of course, they had survived a boat strike, so that's not super surprising. And then about 26 hours later, they were repatriated. There was no trial, no tribunal, no evidence presented, nothing. They were quietly repatriated to each of their alleged home nations, one to Ecuador and one to Colombia. The Colombian president made a statement that day that this individual was received back in awful medical shape, was on a ventilator. And the other went back to Ecuador, and both of whom their governments have released them from any type of criminal charges because they've both said there is no evidence that either of them were in the act of trafficking drugs. And so what's interesting about this, and not just interesting, but it's a really messy diplomatic situation, is you've got a medically compromised detainee being returned to his home country after being in the care of U.S. military personnel for over 24 hours. And so it leaves us vulnerable to the Colombian president saying, how do I know that you didn't further harm this person more than they were obviously hurt in the boat strike? And since we no longer have that video because the admiral ordered the deletion of that video footage. So all of the footage that was taken of the onboarding of the detainee was deleted. When the order came down, the enlisted personnel pushed back. They pointed to protocol. They pointed to code. They pointed to Geneva Convention. They argued against deleting that material. Ultimately, they were overridden. The order apparently came down from the Pentagon to delete that footage. And that is something that is truly, as you can imagine, unprecedented. It's a huge, huge red flag.
Yeah. Well, okay. So that sort of how high it went up in the hierarchy is is my primary question. Obviously, I don't know that Hegseth feels the need to ask Trump about any of this stuff and can give him plausible deniability because Trump basically just said, do what you got to do. And that's a colloquial enough language where he can feel like, well, I didn't mean commit crimes. I just meant within the law, right? It like gives him room to wiggle around this, even if the SCOTUS hadn't given him broad room to, get away with a lot of this stuff. So when it comes to Hegseth, though, Hegseth does know what's legal and what's not legal and what he got a direct order from the president to do or not do. And if the president ever decides, no, I wasn't saying commit a crime to do this or violate these kind of things, even if he comes to that, Hegseth is still on the hook for either kicking it up the chain or taking responsibility for it himself. Now that we know that order to override and, even the leadership on the boat or directly in charge of that particular, directive in the Navy, whoever was controlling the kind of whoever the funnel was from the Pentagon for all those ships, whatever interactions they would have, is still following what Hegseth says as the head of the Department of War.
Right.
So the legality of it, I don't know what the defense of we might be in another Abu Ghraib kind of a situation where the people end up being hung out to dry, even though they clearly got orders to torture people and have that, and with, don't pull back because these people are monsters and Cheney wants them basically killed, but you need as much information before they die of natural causes, because if you're hung upside down for days on end, naturally you're going to die. So that's natural causes. That even though it went to Cheney, who ended up getting in trouble for it was the soldiers that participated in it. And I think that's
exactly
one of the reasons why a lot of these people on the boats might be going, oh, hang on a fucking second. That's what happened. And when Democrats get back in power, there may be, there'll be a John Yoo circling of the wagons around Hegseth and Trump and, whoever else he was filtering this through, where the working stiffs in the Army and the Navy should have known better, right? And hence the seditious six. That's do you think, and this is interesting because the timing of that video kind of corresponds with the window you're talking about of getting this video and getting it to a senator's desk and them maybe spreading it around. Do you think maybe your efforts in this area might have cued them that there might be a necessity for this video? It looks like it overlaps.
Right. I do think so. And there's also CNN just reported this morning with a statement from Pete Hegseth, which adds an additional layer of perplexity on this situation. That CNN reported this morning that the strike actually happened on the 16th. I've been trying to obtain when the strike actually happened because the detainees were brought on board on the 17th. So either you have people in the water for 24 hours and one of them medically compromised, and what was going on that day? Well, if you go back to the 16th, what happened that day was Admiral Halsey said, I'm out of here. So I find it curious that we've got a strike potentially on the 16th.
Right.
Then an admiral resigns. And then the next day, there's an order come down to pick these guys up out of the water, the survivors out of the water, and
Expunge
follow
their
the protocol
existence.
with all of that,
Right.
and then delete the footage of that. So this is a messier and messier and messier situation as it unfolds.
I think one of the questions that will have to be asked in, in any kind of congressional hearing, and again, we need Democrats to take over all these places for them to actually happen and be realistic. Although I do think there are a lot of Republicans out there who, again, don't want to be president of the United States of Russia, and that they do want our rules to apply, even if they think they apply differently. They still want it, they do want these rules to actually exist because they understand the value of them, even if Trump doesn't, even if Hegseth doesn't. And so they're going to, there may be a surprise pushback leading into the midterms to try and, it's a
Right.
great window for them to distance themselves with both the choice of Hegseth in the first place, which squeaked through, and Trump's sort of protocol in this area, and distance themselves from that. Maybe they take advantage of it. But the question would be is, what time did Halsey say, I'm out? Was there a moment
Right.
where he literally walked off station and said, I quit? Specific to the attack. Was the attack and then I quit, and then, or was it, if you guys don't pick these guys up, I quit, and then they pick them up. They say they don't have them until the 17th, but they actually picked them up on the 16th because of when they were dropped off later, and he quits while they're
verified
deleting
with
the video, right?
source. Ultimately, the source I have is someone very close to the situation, and he's verified and re-verified that they were brought on board on the 17th.
Gotcha. Okay. So, and are we talking about like 1 a.m. on the 17th, or like
No, they were
floating
brought
in the
on
water
board around 1500, so that's 3 p.m.
Wow. So yeah, so they were at least in the water minimum, 13 hours, 14 hours. So the
Right.
night, it may be a night strike, because most of these are night strikes because that's when the boats go, because they're harder to spot and blah, blah, blah. At least they think so.
Mm-hmm.
So let's assume, dusk is is your window. So at least in the water since 9 o'clock the night before. And one of
Right.
them, maybe why he's on a ventilator and the like is because he was left afloat there while an
Right.
argument was happening on this fucking boat about picking these
Mhm.
guys up. So that means, does that mean that the admiral was out maybe even before this strike in particular? And this is why, they thought it kind of all bets are off.
Well, I think that what we've seen with the first double strike video, a scenario that I could see being very realistic is the admiral not wanting a repeat of that. So we have
Right.
survivors, okay, that
Mhm.
are floating there. We can see them, and we're not going to do a double strike. We're not going to hit again. So
Yeah.
yeah, I can see a scenario in which there was discussions while these guys are floating in the water. What are we
Right.
going to do? What,
Right.
we're not doing another strike. I'm not doing it.
Yep.
So how are we going to proceed? Right.
Which is that it's a sort of testimony that may happen at some point. Again, only if Democrats take over, probably. But there might be a little wiggle room for this, where you got a almost Pentagon Papers level admission of what happened on that boat, and the fact that he quit because they were going to double tap these guys, and then after everybody around them realized, well, we can't hit him again, because if he's willing to quit about this, right? If he's willing to walk off, then the rank and file know they're not going to participate in another strike, and then that gets really friggin' noisy. That gets where the guys, the soldiers that would be in charge of this are going like, no, if the admiral walks off this and is not going to follow this order, neither am I. So we, fool me once, you can't get fooled again. So they're in that situation, right? and then that's where they're standing around going, what do we do? They're right there. If somebody else picks them up, then where are we? Right?
Right.
They're on the evidence. What if there's no drugs in that boat? What if they were smuggling
Right.
something else?
See, that's the thing. You have to look at that situation and say, okay, if you're out here making the case to the American people that these are narco terrorists, and then you have two of them, you have them. Why
Right.
on earth would you not take photo and video and do the old school, like in Dare where they would lay out the table of drugs that they
Right.
confiscated? Why would you not collect that evidence?
Well, I guess because you're predicating the idea that it will continue no matter what, and that you're being tough on this. You're trying to sell. It's Trump's way of wagging the dog without declaring an actual new war, because he's trying to get away from the Epstein stuff. So looking tough by killing some bad guys is the way you do that. And he's too friendly with the UAE and Qatar and these other groups to go after terrorist groups right now, because that's their buddies. So, because he got a whole new golf course he's putting in and stuff. So it really is hard to. You used to be able to wag the dog in the Middle East. Maggots in general are not fond of these, quote, never-ending foreign wars, right? That was one of the sales pitches.
Right.
So what's the never-ending war that they could probably reinstitute that a lot of them do believe in, and that would be the war on drugs. And specifically after the fentanyl crisis hit rural America particularly bad and was, killing a lot of lower middle class white kids at college who thought they were taking an Adderall pill and then they start dying. That's where you think maybe the motivation is there. House, by the way, it's
would
just
you want to collect that evidence?
Right,
Right?
exactly.
Like,
yes.
again.
You'd want to beat your chest. Like, we see these boats we're
Right.
stopping. Like, even if it was we shot the boats that were going to get away, but we caught all the boats we could, and look at all these drugs. And look
Right.
at this Colombian, and look at this, Nicaraguan, and they're working together. So we got to talk to the governments of both of these, because this guy's cousin is a general that works, like that kind of stuff. That's what you would do that
Right.
parade. By the way, it's, I guess, breaking news that the House Democrats have just announced articles of impeachment against Hegseth.
Excellent.
Yeah, so which is good.
Excellent.
Now the question if they actually go anywhere is one thing. But I guarantee the White House will push back onto it in a brutish way.
Right.
So you wanted to protect drug runners. Like, I don't even know if that, to your point, I don't even know if these are drug runners. How the fuck are we supposed to know?
Yep.
The evidence is at the bottom of the ocean. And it's,
Yep.
even if it was drugs, the salt water will turn it into something else. You can't even chemically test it and go, this used to be cocaine. It'll all dissipate. So
And honestly, I feel like if we were blasting, kilos and kilos of cocaine into international waterways, environmental groups would be all over this. They would be testing the waters. They would be opposing this,
Right, yeah.
Because
all of our swimmers
the
are swimming
results of
way
this
too
could
fast.
be-
Right.
Right. The result of this could be, can you imagine Kosh Patel announcing Cocaine Shark?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
mean,
Right. Yeah.
Re-
I mean, the movie itself. It sounds like a Steve
Right.
Bannon production. He's got production money to throw around. But you're absolutely right. Well, I will say, for the record, though, salt water would dissipate cocaine and turn it into something else. So it's one of the ways
Right.
you destroy most drugs. So it won't survive or whatever. The way it doesn't even survive bath water most of the time. So I guess they're counting on that. But it also, again, helps them get rid of the evidence. If it's a screw up or if they lied, nobody is to know, because the boats are gone. Hence, the second strike was almost as much about the vehicle as it was about the people, because they were floating
Right.
on the remnants of the boat. It was overturned, and one of the things was
Correct.
they were. Am I off that there was part of the argument was that they had to be struck because they were going to signal to other boats because they were swimming back to the pieces there,
Right.
but like
They
that.
were reaching for the radio.
Right. Yeah. So if the radio was still functional, then the boat was still there. You could pull it out of the water and go, see, this is where the drugs were hidden. Here's some remnants of it that's still there, all that. But then you have to be sure in the first place, before you open up that can of worms, that there are actually drugs on board. That they actually are doing that. That they're not smuggling, like information. Like that they don't want to transport crypto, for example. They could be hand delivering
Right.
crypto wallets back and forth as part of something, and maybe that's why we'll see Don Jr. scuba diving down there in the near future. But the reality is like this is obviously a big thing. So I want to ask you, in your in your process of this, because I'm fascinated by this as well and the great work that you have done. And by the way, everybody can go to the Blue Amp Substack, Blue Amp Media, and Melissa and David Schuster have this article up on there right now. I recommend you subscribe to the Blue Amp Substack anyways. Great work being done there. And specifically this, I'm always like this, without giving away, source kind of stuff or whatever, like how this kind of starts rolling and you're kind of like, oh my God, this has to, because I'm sure that maybe there's stuff that's kind of percolated up that could be dismissed by the uppers as kind of disgruntled soldiers or, seamen, whoever it is, and it won't go anywhere. And some stuff gets to you and you're like, yeah, I get this. I hear this a lot, versus this is gigantic.
When I got it, I read the document. It was 10 o'clock at night on the 20th, and I was already in bed, and I got back up and read it and reread it, and was like, am I reading this correctly? Because this sounds like deleted evidence. This sounds, it was so just, it blew my mind. I had a TSSCI security clearance. I worked with crypto materials on board the USS Eisenhower when I was in. And whether you're talking about photo and video or you're talking about crypto, the order to delete is really unprecedented. That's something that anybody would push back on. It's so unusual. And so there's a term that JAG used to send this order down, and that term is unprivileged belligerence. And I think we're all going to hear a lot more of this term, because apparently this is the little gray area loophole in the Geneva Conventions that Pete Hegseth is chosen to use to identify these narco terrorists as the alleged narco terrorist. And the thing about unprivileged belligerents is they don't get the same Geneva Convention protections as either civilians or actual POWs. It really is a convenient loophole. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the U.S. has used this loophole before, and it's been in Guantanamo Bay.
Right.
So whenever we've used this loophole, it has not come back as a good PR look on America, because it allows us to not afford the humanitarian rights to the people we have in our custody. So using that term, I found really, really interesting that they're choosing to say that of photo and video would be attributed to that. To me, the process of capturing photo and video is just as much to protect the American military as it is to protect the detainee. So now we have a situation, like I said before, where we have an individual in our care for 26 hours, just shy of 26 hours, delivered back to his home country on a ventilator. And that country can just say, you made, which essentially we did, we issued the boat strike, but they can say you didn't care for him properly or you wounded him further. In which case, if we had video, we could say, nuh-uh, we've got video. Look, this is how we cared for him the entire time. But now we've thrown that away, and we do not have any evidence of how those two individuals were treated while in the care of the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Marine Corps.
Whether
that is a diplomatic disaster.
Right. And which is, we have no way of assuring people that their injuries happened in the strike itself, even if you thought it was justified. This could just be like, yeah, you brought him on board and went after him with a fillet knife, right, to try and get information out of him. Like, that's why. I mean, ultimately, oddly enough, that's why there were a lot of photos of Abu Ghraib. Curiously enough, was this concept of, and by the way, for people who are listening, it's belligerents, TS, as in plural. As in group of people. These people are unprivileged belligerents, as opposed to unprivileged belligerents as an act, which would be the defining, I guess that's, you could define Trump's campaigns as almost that. He is, an unprivileged belligerent in his own thing. But here's why in the sort of the way the Geneva Convention describes him is like, civilians who pick up weapons that are laying on the ground and open fire just get dropped even though they may not be wearing a uniform, and therefore you don't have to treat them like as a civilian now because they're carrying even if they, in this moment, decided to join the fight without joining the army,
Right.
they still count as an army person, and so they can be put down the same way an army person is. If they are captured, they do not have a coordinated understanding of the circumstance, so they're either a terrorist or a non-state actor, right? And this is where the designation of cartel people as terrorists is very dubious, and is ultimately the whole thing, all of this is predicated on. Because in a war on terror, the unprivileged belligerents, that you could be treated like that as a deterrent from civilians, picking up guns and joining into the fight or whatever, because you don't even have the privilege of being a POW if you're caught. But in designating terror groups, all terror groups, technically speaking, under the authorized use of military force and stuff, do fall under this category.
I'm trying to remember the guy's name. There was a Canadian Brigadier General, Kenneth Watkin, who I consider to be the foremost expert on the term unprivileged belligerents. He's written essentially novellas on the topic. He's written for the Harvard Institutes of Justice on the topic. And so he has broken down how America has repeatedly used terrorists to align with that term unprivileged belligerent, so we can get out of affording them humanitarian protections. And he had kind of gone quiet. His last paper on the topic was like 2017, I believe. But just about 6 days ago, he wrote again. And from his expert opinion, he didn't speak so much to the unprivileged belligerent, but in his expert opinion, these boat strikes are unlawful on the face of it, which would then make any resulting action unlawful. And I think that Hegseth is using this, what I find really shaky sort of legal ground to state that any boat that has drugs on it that is sailing northward towards the United States is, by conducting that activity, committing an act of hostility. And therefore, those on board are no longer simply civilians, and yet they are not a part of a collective army. So this is how he's packaging them, as unprivileged belligerents.
Right. Yeah. And again, I do believe that the concept of the unprivileged belligerent in battle is a reasonable one. I don't get quite why they wouldn't get, if you caught one, they wouldn't get POW protections. I guess it's because there's nowhere to return them to. So in POW protections, you would return them, let's say in a prisoner swap. Maybe that's the value difference, is that I'm not going to change a terrorist for an American soldier to the government that might have our soldier. I mean, I get but there's some equivalent therein, is that we can, it falls into the legal aspect of criminal behavior and extradition, that we can also, engage in releasing somebody from our jails to somebody in like Russia, to get, one of our prisoners out. Then maybe that's that there should be a secondary definition to these folks that follows that this has more to do with an exchange of criminal prisoners than POWs or something. But it doesn't mean that you let them sit there with a gaping wound in their femoral artery. So, but the reason I think,
and to speak into that, most legal precedent since the 1949 establishment of the Geneva Convention has said that in when there's doubt like that, you're going to initially begin treating them as a civilian. You're going to classify them as a civilian if they are not in any way visibly affiliated with the combative force. And then if you're going to declare some individual or group of individuals as unprivileged belligerents, there is supposed to be a tribunal, even if it's in the field tribunal, and there is no evidence whatsoever that such a tribunal was
and
conducted.
If there was, it got destroyed. Which means, the assumption would be, if they did have a tribunal, they realized they were wrong, and that's why you get rid of it. Beyond the fact that they may not want to even bother treating them, and they just don't think it's important, and they deleted it because of this is, this administration is all about show, and they realize the power dominant theme and eyeballs on evidence. The boat strike video they thought would be macho and cool cost them more than it gained them, even amongst the magosphere. Big chunk of the magosphere was not fans of these. You got Rand Paul, riding Trump's ass on a bunch of these things, but he's not alone in this. There's a lot of, run-of-the-mill Republicans that thought this was absolutely wrong, and opens up a whole can of worms about like sanctioned behavior by other countries that we can't push back on anymore because we're engaging in it ourselves, right? That's always the concern. That's how this stuff comes about. So I guess the next question I have is, how would evidence be gained to, let's say they stop right now. I don't know if there's been a strike in the last week. I have to look at when the last one was, but that they are shifting tack away from this, hoping it goes away. And that, or if they're simply not reporting them. That's the other thing. Is that if the one thing they have on their side is that if they are drug boats or they are smuggling boats of any kind, it just don't brag about it and it goes away. And that might be where they're shifting tactics to, knowing that this is going to play out badly for Hegseth. And just these, it's not like you can undo these two strikes. So, how many, and this goes to your time in both Navy intel and then, the people that you talk to or whatever, ballparking on this strike, the people in the chain that would see this or participate in from the admiral who gets the order all the way down to the seaman that carries it out. How many human beings are we talk maximum and minimum in this window, that there's a potential for somebody to break away and go, I'm not going down with this ship, no pun intended, right? Just as far as the volume, normally in a circumstance like this, just in a call order strike, how many people were within earshot of it?
At least a dozen.
Right. Okay.
At least a dozen. Right.
Right.
And from the evidence that I saw, this was something that was witnessed by multiple shipboard personnel. Again, just the sheer fact that when Marines are coming on board and shipboard personnel begin executing their standard protocol, there's a conflict. So you're seeing this ineptitude and this confusion leak down all the way from the Pentagon to the point where Marines and sailors are arguing in the moment over what protocol to follow, who to listen to. I've never seen or heard of anything like that in my life. You are trained on protocol. Protocol is what you do. There's no questioning it, especially in the moment. So that is just utterly shocking. And I think it's really, really indicative of the state of the enlisted servicemen right now. They don't know what to think, who to listen to, what to follow, when they rely on their instincts to go back to follow protocol, to follow what they've practiced, what they've been taught to do. And there's pushback on that in the moment. I can't imagine being in their place.
Yeah. Well, and okay, so you are told the protocol about how to operate and all these kind of stuff, but then the Hegseth comes in with this whole we're restoring the warfighter ethos, that kind of thing. That constitutes probably in his mind a shift towards we're on a war footing in general, no matter where we are, which is not the case, right? And there's a difference. You're not talking about decisions made on a battlefield in Saving Private Ryan, where you're standing across from a bunch of dudes in Nazi uniforms and people that might be supporting them. This is a boat on a ship, in the middle of the water in the middle of the night. You're not even hailing it to stop and blowing it out of the water. It's not even close. It's absurd.
Right.
So that's where I feel like the argument is probably happening, because they're aware on the one hand of this protocol that they've been taught, and then on the other hand there's this secondary new protocol that he's trying to enforce on everybody, that we're at war. And the argument is yeah, but Are we? No, this isn't war. They're not firing on us. These are not enemy combatants. They're not members of Al-Shabaab or fucking Hamas or whatever. They're not, this isn't Yemen and our boats are going through a area where they're, like off the Barbary coast in the 1800s where they're seizing ships. They are, if anything, trying to avoid us.
Right. Exactly. And the fact that they're not an organized army, they are not a nation that we have declared, no act of Congress has been stated that we're at war with anyone. And part of what myself and the other veterans that were involved in getting this into that closed door Armed Service Committee meeting is just anger. We're really, really angry that there are now enlisted servicemen and women in the Navy and Marine Corps who are held hostage on these ships. A lot of people
Right.
say, well, I know what I would do. I would say no, I would refuse the order. Well, what happens when you refuse an order in the moment is not pleasant.
Yeah.
Typically, you are immediately yourself put in the brig.
Yeah.
And there is a captain's mast held if you're in the Navy. There is a process that happens if you choose to say, no, I'm not following this order. And it is not a pleasant process
Right.
for that individual. So the sheer fact that they are you got to remember the average enlisted person is 18 to 24 years old. These are young people.
Yeah.
They don't even have their wits about them in life yet, really. All they know is the orders they're given, the protocol they're given, and what their training is. They are attempting to follow that training and then receiving pushback from their superior officers when they are thousands of miles away from their family, out on a ship in the middle of the ocean that could potentially become a combat zone at any moment if we were to strike Vietnam, or I'm sorry, see, Vietnam comes out,
Yeah.
Venezuela.
Right.
So I am furious that our enlisted men and women are being put in this situation. I know a lot of veterans that are furious about this.
Right. And the problem is if it's not curtailed, obviously it metastasizes. At this level of like freedom to participate in this kind of stuff, it gives, if there's, if nobody is called before, a committee or a tribunal about this order or whatever, then there is no reason to not do them, and it becomes the protocol. And then you have a strike order that everyone would be aware is on a caravan of migrants or something like that. That strike becomes legal after time because they're viewed as enemy combatants. Come up here to they are civilians hiding terrorists among their group for the express mission of destroying the United States. Whatever you can hear the Hegseth argument in this or whatever. There was the phrase, kill them all, let God sort them out. Famous, the Marine patch that goes around. Okay. Most people don't know that comes from a Catholic bishop in trying to find the Templar Knights. At one point, after they had retired, some of them had moved into these small cities, and they were such good people that the townsfolk wouldn't tell the bishop and their army where these people were so that they could be tried and killed. And there were 4 of them in this one town, and I guess the leader of the military force that the bishop had brought said, they're not going to tell us. They're not going to out these people. And he said, kill them all. God will know his own. And that's where the phrase initially came from. Mm-hmm. And there's an element of it became this kind of macho call to, that like, that's not my problem in war, which you can argue. If you're in a field and half the people are dressed in army outfits and half of them aren't, like you're in Vietnam, and that people are intentionally, because of your rules, dressing in civilian garb specifically to sneak past because you're not allowed to shoot at them, how long would that last? 2 days, a week, right? That kind of thing?
Right.
So obviously these things are born out of a reality, but when you don't put leadership in that is aware of the value of that reality and the limited nature of it, that becomes a tool for abject lawlessness. And that's that's where Trump has run away with these, like we're all like, he's breaking all these norms. And it's apparently these norms, we didn't know they needed to be laws for most people. Right. And the same thing is true of like, you're saying like, can't imagine something like this happening or haven't heard of anything like this happening before. You could argue that it was like maybe whatever, Charlie Company in My or, Abu Ghraib or, those kind of
Right.
things do show up. And they are precisely why people turn on an administration and a military exercise, whether it's a war or the war on terror or the war in Vietnam, or in this particular instance, this bizarre kind of version of the war on drugs that,
Right.
yeah, that even the goal of it and the focus on Venezuela seems strange to most people, most maggots. So
Right.
yeah.
Well, it goes back to, George Washington's opposition and many of the founders' oppositions to having a standing army. Because if
Mhm.
you have a standing army, situations like this can occur where the people, the citizens that are represented by this military, are not bought in to the mission of
Mhm.
the war we're supposed to be in. And so if you don't have a standing army and you have to rely on going around and rounding up militia, they have to feel passionate about that cause in order to grab a musket and leave their house. But if you have a standing army, you can use that standing army to become a bludgeon to bludgeon your way around the world, whether or not your citizens are on board with the mission. And this is why there are tomes, there are volumes of military protocol and standards and code and Geneva Conventions to control and to keep a lid on this behavior and to make sure that our military is an apolitical, unbiased force. And
Yeah.
once you start a situation where you're asking young enlisted men and women to listen to a man over the code, to listen to a leader and his agenda over the standing law, over international law, we are in majorly treacherous waters.
Yeah. And again, there becomes there's also sort of a breakaway from this that happened in Vietnam. Arguably, it happened in Iraq a few times, where the soldiers themselves, who are on the side of this kind of warrior ethos kind of situation, go further than the orders that they're given, because they're like, I know what he means, and they end up mowing down a house full of people who are having a wedding because there's too much light coming from that house, and anybody who would be doing something after dark during this period of time is clearly it's probably a secret meeting. Better to safe than sorry. And we had multiple instances like that in a couple of these places, even if it was just fog of war or people going going native, as they would sometimes call it, or just losing touch with reality. This idea that you just have you guys are here to kill, kill, kill. That works when you're an infantry that's controlled by those people. Once you get the order, when I tell you to jump, you say how high. Those are in concert with each other in military training. You are in the kill, kill, kill mentality, but only where I point you. Because if you start killing the wrong people, you make the problems worse for us. Well, there's a issue with where Hegseth almost wants this like illusion of a bunch of Rambos running around. They know who they're supposed to kill and who they're not. And if they kill a couple that they're not, then, that's just shit happens, and file it away.
Well, he talked about that in his book. He literally bragged about the fact that after receiving an official, orders from people way above him, he turned to his little company because they wouldn't give him a whole platoon. They only gave him a few people to be in charge of. And he turns around and tells those people not to listen to those orders. And if you're in the heat of the moment on the battlefield, you do whatever you feel that you need to do. So he already bragged about doing this in his book. And so someone with such a fundamental misunderstanding of the reason we have these protocols and rules and safeguards, putting him in charge of it's unconscionable. Like, I can't even fathom it.
Right. Well, and the irony is that none of these guys seem to get the message of the pop culture stuff they seem to be following. In the case of, I'm always, I like to remind people that Rambo 3 is dedicated to the valiant people of Afghanistan. And that, the second one is about him, like a bunch of these movies, about going after POWs who are being kept in secret places, tortured, all the awful things we're against. And that's why, the character in it is the good guy in this, is because the other side does this and we don't. And what Hegseth and those guys have just acquiesced to is like, why don't we? You know, they're this close, it seems, to going, well, if ISIS beheads people, like they're, you know, isn't
Right.
this they even like decapitation strike as a phrase. They used it in some ways about the Iranian nuclear program and those kind of things. So
Right.
I think they feel untethered not only to the rules of the Geneva Convention and the standard of like who directs war in this country, which is the Congress, but I think even to speaking on behalf of the humanitarianism of the American people. And this is where I think they might be running up against a wall and not realizing it anyways. And you know, my question is, and this is, we only got about 12 minutes left, and people have a couple of questions, I'm sure, in the chat room for you as well. It's been such a great conversation, and again, I want to remind everybody, go to the Blue Amp Media. Let me see if I can find this over here. Yeah, the Blue Amp Media Substack, and take a look at. There we go. This article, and do you have a follow up coming up? Are we on the? Are you working on the next chapter of it?
I'm working on, yes, because I'm working on clarifying what happened on the 16th. Was the strike on the 16th or the 17th? And I don't want to call anybody out, but I found the CNN reporting just a tad sloppy in that it really sort of was fuzzy on that detail. And
It really matters.
I'm working on a second piece to clarify that.
Especially when it comes to when did Halsey take a powder? You know, when right? That's crucial because it means he was either reacting to it or after he left they did this, and they either had second thoughts about just second striking this one after, so it worked that he left, or they struck it and they were going to do it again. He refused to carry the order out, and other people did it for him. So those people knew full well that he thought it was an illegal order, wouldn't follow it, and they did it anyways. So, like that, there's so much to that. And thank you for drilling down on the details of this. This is the very thing that, you know, when we talk about like Trump and Epstein, this whole idea that he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago for being a creep that they used to sell for a long time. And, and I would say, first of all, it's a lie. We now know that, he was making it up, and that he was hiring people away from the spa and that kind of stuff. And he had underage girls working in the spa at Mar-a-Lago. What the hell is that?
Yeah.
And already a problem. But then apparently according to the apocryphal tale, he only got mad when Epstein went after the rich kids at his, that the members of his club had that were there.
Right.
And he didn't give a crap when it was just the local white trash, girls on the cheerleading squad at the local high schools.
Right.
They're not worth saving. So it makes it even worse for him. Like, he only cares about his rich buddies and members of the club. He didn't give a damn what his buddy Epstein was doing for decades. So it makes it even worse, their way of fixing it. There's similar things in this, is that their explanation on these things in many ways just gets worse. And what do they fall back on? National security? Is that going to be they're just going to circle the wagons and claim this is, we can't tell you the details of these two enemy combatants that we had to turn back because of national security. We do have information, but na, right?
Well, this was exactly why my sources were so insistent that this not go. And they, there was conversation with the New York Times, and the sources said, absolutely not. We are not talking to the Times. This needs to get to the desk of someone who can conduct oversight.
Right.
And then, and only then, are we willing to talk about it? And even then, after I was able to confirm that it was in that committee meeting and that it was brought up as evidence in that committee meeting, and that my source on the ship had legal representation and felt comfortable, and then they asked that I tell the story, and that's most likely because I've been in the Navy, I've been on board ship, and I could write it with verbiage in a way that I insulate as much as possible so that we keep them safe, because I think they are going to throw them under the bus. They are going to charge them with something for even sharing this information, even though there was no security classifications on those documents whatsoever. So they didn't share anything confidential.
Right.
It wasn't even so much as Mark's secret, which was also mind-boggling to me
Right.
in and of itself. But it wasn't. They didn't share anything confidential. But I think you're right. Enlisted men and women, traditionally to this day, mostly come from lower income homes. That's
Mm.
where they go recruit. They recruit in
Yep.
low income neighborhoods.
Sure.
And I think you've hit on something there, that he's not going to feel any kind of way for throwing junior enlisted people under the bus, because they're going to be just like those poor white girls at the club.
Right. Well, and Trump, we already know that, like, I want to say it was like, I don't know, 15 years ago or something, but this is like one of these, Trump talking, he didn't want his sons enlisting in the military. There was this story that came out that if any of them did it, he would disown them. And apparently, Don Jr. had thought about it, through like officers stuff, but he was just like, it's embarrassing. Like, Trump thought it was embarrassing, even if you just went the officers route through university and ROTC. But ultimately, he views that exactly what you're talking about like low income people using the army as a stepping stone to moving up the class ladder in many ways,
Right.
through building respect, through putting their lives on the line. He views that as a welfare program for low income people. He said it for a long
Right.
time. Like, it helps these assholes get a house and stuff that they wouldn't be able to get if they just had to work a regular job. So they join the army, and we have to, bow down to them or praise them or whatever. And this is right in line with his whole, like, I like, heroes that weren't captured, stuff with John McCain,
Right.
like stuff that I don't know how any military people support Trump at all. But for the belief, I suppose, that they think that there's an enemy out there that is unseen, that is greater than any threat. And like, be it Iran or, Islamic forces who are going to do another 9/11. There's a lot of 9/11 trauma in a bunch of people that are like, look, I give a shit about housing policy and food banks and stuff like that. None of that will matter if Islamists blow up our fucking infrastructure. Like, I get where that's where
Right.
people pack in. Post 9/11, there was a lot of that. And the war on drugs.
But also,
yeah. Good.
I think we're at an age with veterans where almost all the veterans in the last, what I would consider honorable war, are dead. So we have veterans from Vietnam and Desert Storm and Operation Iraqi Freedom, which I fought in. And you've got all these veterans who, after the fact, look back on what they were asked to do. They look back on the global nature of the conflict, and they realize they were used for something that was not ethical, that was not moral. We were lied to.
Right.
This narco terrorist thing feels exactly like
Yes.
weapons of mass destruction to me. And so you've got a much wiser and more aware veteran class than you had 50 years ago. 50 years ago, veterans may have full throated, thrown their support behind this guy, but these aren't the veterans you have now. And I've been in DC multiple times at marches and rallies over the last couple of months, and I am seeing tremendous amounts of veterans coming out, and even veterans holding signs that say things like, I'm a card carrying Republican and I don't support this.
Right. It seems it's amazingly cut and dry, and maybe that's the part that they're not counting on, is that there's this hubris, that the Trump administration has, that they think they've got a certain group of people in their pocket, whether it's law enforcement, military families, that kind of stuff. And they assume that because there are so many, like, fervent true believers that will parade through the White House, that means if they've got those people, like the evangelicals, that they have all the Christians in the country, or that if they have,
right,
because Paula White is standing there, she's indicator that she's got control of them. And it's almost like a multi-level marketing scheme where these are just clients and she's in charge of keeping them in line. And if you have her in line, you have them. And I think they believe that about veterans in a lot of ways. I mean, Trump sold this idea, and I hammered this till I was blue in the face, and he stopped doing it, and I take credit for this for a while, and then he brain farts and brings it up every so often randomly, and then stops again. He keeps taking. He says he was responsible for the VA Choice Act. 50 years they were trying to do this. VA Choice Act was signed in 2014 by Obama. Yeah. Hal Rogers from Kentucky put it on the. It was a Republican. It was bipartisan. It was across the board. Everybody agreed on it. It was one of the. The only thing that passed easier than that was release of the Epstein files. So it wasn't a big deal. he had to sign the paperwork on the, well, it's been 3 years. Is it working? Sure. Well, let's keep going. Some of it had a sunset element to it. And he thinks or he wants to sell the idea that he was behind it. Which is an embarrassment because he's hiding behind veterans. He's using them as, I would say, human shields in this regard.
Right.
This taking them for granted part around this stuff, assuming that they are dumb, will follow orders, are cowed. Doesn't it seems maybe because he skipped Vietnam successfully through the help of Bone Spurs and his dad's buddy who's a doctor,
right?
That he missed all the stuff with John Kerry testifying, and certainly the point of all the movies that he thinks are macho movies about Vietnam and stuff. Like, he didn't see Platoon. He certainly, if he watched the first Rambo First Blood movie, he didn't see the end monologue, which is, and the fact that this whole thing was because of PTSD, and nobody would listen to him about the awful they were asked to do. Like, he missed that part. Right. It was just like, he showed them what for. Like, it's just stupid. Like, he missed all the point. And I think he still is, and Hegseth certainly is, because it's it's cosplay for him, just like Patel at the FBI.
And that makes me Hegseth that much more accountable. Donald Trump has never done an honorable thing in his life. He wants to talk about the word groceries like it's so. And when you really think about it, that man has had food presented to him on probably a golden plate every day of his life. He's never had to go to a grocery store.
Right.
He just
never.
The term is funny to him because it's comical.
Even his wife doesn't do it.
Look at
his word. None of it. It's not even like he has a traditional family situation where I made my woman do it, which is how he talks. But she doesn't do the shopping either. Like, yeah.
Right, but he's never served. He's never gone and given his time and his energy and said to his nation, I will be willing to step up and potentially lose my life in defense of something greater. Pete Hegseth has.
Right.
So shame on him for throwing younger enlisted people under the bus with issuing these ridiculous orders to delete video. Shame on Pete Hegseth because he's taken that oath and he should know better.
Right. Well, he also is probably one of those guys who watched A Few Good Men and thought Jack Nicholson's character was robbed, and doesn't understand why defending the Constitution of the United States and everything that it stands for is what should curtail your behavior from the basest instincts that you might have, because once you cross that line, the country ceases to mean that anymore. If the enemy wants to turn America into something else, an authoritarian religious state or something like that, you help them when you don't apply our laws and our rules. You aid and abet the enemy. This is support for the enemy. This is, if you're saying maybe ISIS is right in how they kill people, then ISIS has won. They used to do this whole thing, like, if we don't go, if I don't have the freedom to go shopping, the terrorists win, right? There's an element of, if we torture people, the terrorists win. If we cross our own lines, and that doesn't mean you have to be naive in a firefight about something, but after the firefight is over, you both have the resources and the standards to live beyond and above that. We're at the end of the hour, but I so appreciate you coming on. I'd love to have you on when your follow-up comes out, so we can pick up where we left off with this, because this is so crucial. And I always talk about the articles when you read them in the New York Times or something, or USA Today. It depends on whether there's color photographs or not. This is the decision. The third paragraph is always the yeah, but. They tell the story. It's kind of the clickbait is the first two. The title might draw your eye. The third paragraph is, it might not be this. It probably isn't. But anyways, where was I? And in USA Today, it's the fifth or the seventh, because they make them smaller. They just divide the paragraphs up into smaller chunks, right? More readable. But one of the things that that yeah, but is about is that's where the detail comes in. Where it might not be sexy, but the details might point out that actually, if you look at the numbers, it isn't this. But everybody's saying this, and we're talking about what everybody's saying, not what's actually happening.
Right.
This is an opposite situation where the yeah, but part of this leads. They're saying it was this. They're saying it was this. Yeah, but he quit on this day, and it may have been before or after. This is details we need to find out, and this requires
Right.
congressional oversight, legal oversight into this that matters for the country. And you know, the betrayal of the Constitution and the American people that occurred in Abu Ghraib, that arguably is in what
Yes.
what Charlie Company did in My Lai. By the way, very little attention is paid to the other soldiers that stood between them and the civilians, and said, fire on our own soldiers if they open fire on these civilians. That was heroic. That was people holding the line. That was people living up
Right.
to the standard. They don't get nearly as much credit, thanks to the Seymour Hirsches of the world, who's all yeah, but all warts and and no skin. But there's a crucial aspect of this. The details matter, and you being on that detail is so reassuring and so inspiring, that my chat definitely sees it. They're all singing your praises, about what a great guest you are. But also, it's because the details are what they're trying to gloss over. And when the act of doing that is exactly why you're like, okay, we need to look deeper at the exact timeline of when this happened.
Right.
As the day went on, who left their station and said, I won't do this? Who was punished? When were these people brought aboard? Why? This is now a murder investigation. And that, from a true crime fixated populace, is something people can wrap their heads around.
Right.
And it is very.
And that's I always, whenever I do anything, any appearance or anything, I like to leave everybody with an action item. And today's is really easy. Go grab that article, send it to your elected officials, and say, you need to be asking where that video is. You need to be asking why we deleted videos of foreign detainees on a U.S. Navy vessel.
Right. And I am putting that link, by the way, in the chat right now. So that people can do precisely that. It is going out to Facebook and Rumble Facebook and Twitch and YouTube and Instagram, folks. I will put that in a separate thing as well for you guys. But you can go to the Blue Amp. Hold on one second. I'm gonna pump that into so everybody's got it in on all of the multiple channels that I'm on right now. This is really crucial. That these details need to dog this administration. If we can't, because I've often said they have no shame. They're incapable of being shamed, because you have to have empathy to be shamed. But they can be
Right.
embarrassed in the case of Trump, being seen as weak or being seen as out of the loop. And so the one area where Trump might be in a mood to kick Hegseth out is if Hegseth embarrasses Trump by Republicans and a lot of other people suddenly going, this is a crime and it's terrible, full stop. And Trump didn't know about it, or Trump okayed it. Which one is it? And so Trump will throw Hegseth under the bus. That's what he does. And then we'll start getting to the bottom of it, even if it's Trump just covering his ass.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so crucial. So anyways, I put that link out. We'll do it again. And then when you have that next one out, I would love to have you on. I know David's going to come on, later in the week or next week or something. And so, this is a story that's crucial to us staying on, because the cascading effect of not doing something when something like this
Right.
happens defines the behavior of the military. And Trump's got another 3 years. I don't think he's going to make it. I think the general
Right.
consensus is the doctor we had on the other day is saying 3 to 5 months maximum. And but if Hegseth outlasts Trump, Vance isn't going to kick him to the curb.
Right.
And a closeted individual is really good at plausible deniability. So there's a big issue with that, with that crowd, and this. So I think it's crucial we stay on this, and it's a great thing for Democrats to push for, because there is a lot of bridges between them and Republicans, rank and file, especially the ones that have served, that know how serious
Exactly.
this is. Right. Yes, and somebody in the chat room was asking, yes, the doctor we had on gave Trump 3 to 5 months to live. Maybe with Walter Reed, they can stretch it out to 9 months, but he's seen these people spire. He's a geriatric doctor I had on the other day, and he's like, I thought we're 5 months away from them just limit him to 4 hours a day in public. This guy's like, nope, the wind down is happening. You can tell. And again,
Yeah.
another reason why we have to be dogged about Hegseth, because if it's Vance may circle the wagons a little bit better than Trump is able to, because he's not a belligerent fool in this part of it, and he can lay it all at Trump's feet and bury it. So anyways, thank you for being on this story, Melissa. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it, and I'd love to have you back on if you'd like to, both covering this and anything else you'd like to promote and push out there, because this kind of reporting is so rare and so important, and we greatly appreciate you.
Absolutely. I'm so grateful you had me on. Any way that I can, amplify this. I feel like I'm screaming into the void sometimes. And yeah, so I really appreciate you getting it out and amplifying it.
Yep. Everybody in my chat room will start pushing it to their people, and this will be one of those pebble in a pond opportunities. I'll also push this out on my Blue Sky and other things, and we'll just keep hammering this. But I also think checking back in with you as the story progresses is crucial. So feel free. We'll keep in touch, and we'll make this happen, because I think this is really it's important just in a life and death, and in for the country and for the criminality that's happening. We must stay on top of this. So thank you so much, Melissa Corrigan, everybody. Whatever, and I'll let you go, and we'll talk to you again.
All right, thank you.
All right, cheers. There she goes. Hold on, I'll let you out of the thing. There you go. And chat room, thank you guys for being with me today. And thanks again to Cliff Schechter for helping make this possible. Melissa was terrific, and Blue Gal and Driftglass being on, fantastic conversation as well. I have to say today, we got a lot of action items and a lot of pithy phrases, that we can use and that we need to use with those. Is talk about how the Republicans always, are better at communication and all this kind of shit. I think we reached a tipping point where we're starting to get a grasp on how to message these things in a way that the vast majority of the populace can understand. And I think, if you think if you appreciate we have, police and private security, public roads and private driveways, public schools and private schools, that you have the option in your life, a public option in so many other areas, why not insurance? Why not healthcare? Why not? If it doesn't work, you'll always still have the private to go to. If private is so much better and can compete with that kind of thing, then they will. Private schools, don't tend to bitch about it. And they try. They try to, but the only way they really succeed is by giving a better education than some other place, or connections, whatever. That's the other thing you're paying for in a private school. Postal Service versus UPS and FedEx. Exactly. Postal Service is a guarantee. UPS and FedEx if you need stuff faster. If you can have a public option, the military, you can join a militia in this country. You can volunteer to fight in another country if you want to, but you got a public army. What if you had to what if your only option was a private army? What if the soldiers in the military only fought pathogens with their rifles? What if they were shooting giant, it was like Starship Troopers, and they were shooting bugs, and you had to, you had to pay for a private militia to protect you from the aliens? Would that work? No, you'd be happy to have a public army. Why not the same in healthcare? So, a great, I think, argument to be made around that. You got a public option everywhere but healthcare. Why? There's no good reason. Make them defend it. Do you drive public highways? Do you drive public roads? Do they have potholes in them? Yeah. Is that better or worse than driving on dirt, or trusting, local businesses to charge you for driving on a road? Right? silly. Like they lose that argument everywhere they bring it up. And it's not socialism, it's not communism, it's democratic taxation. Where do we what is the best use of our taxes? And again, the nice thing about a public option is it's optional. You don't have to do it. If you morally disagree with it, you're not forced into it. It's not Social Security. It's not, Medicare or Medicaid in there. And by the way, none of these people who argue against a public option are opting out of getting their Medicare, when they age into it, or getting Social Security when they age into it. Notice that? None of them are like, as a point of pride, I disagree with this nonsense. I am the government should give my my Social Security checks to Elon Musk as an apology. None of them do that. None of them with the ACA were like wearing a medallion that said "Do not treat" instead of "Do not resuscitate." The DNR, they should have a DNT medallion that they have to wear. And if somebody's wearing that and they're in a car accident, they're like, unless I got enough cash on me to treat whatever's wrong with me, don't treat me. I'm not going to have insurance, so fuck me. I'm not going to put that burden on the rest of you and raise the price of medical care, right? None of them do that. They all like, treat my ass. As Carlin said, if you got a tube, you got a plug, stick it in me, man. So that part of it, you can have a public option everywhere, but healthcare, that makes no sense. Flat out, just say it. Just, it's, and if I can convince a greater group of people to do this and we vote on it, it's not socialism, it's not communism, it's democratic taxation. That's it. Secondly, sticking to these stories and following them through, but also the action item of sharing that story and that I put in the chat room, and I'm gonna put it in there. I'm gonna put it in a second time, in case you missed it, and pass that along with an exasperated emoji to your representatives. And by the way, they don't have to just be your federal representatives. Send it to your governor. Send it to your state rep, because a lot of state reps are, former military or are in the reserves or in the National Guard as well. Send it to them. So this is a really honorable thing to put to hill to stick your flag in. So do it. And I will argue why a public option, and you guys know I have a better plan for public option than just a federal one. Having a federal one, great idea. But you should also be able to have state ones that you could also buy into. States should be able to set them up. So that you could buy into Washington states, or you could buy into Massachusetts, or you could buy in, if California puts one together, you could buy into those single payer systems. If you don't want the federal one because you're worried about Republicans, sweeping its legs, you can go someplace else where it's better supported. And if you decide at one point it doesn't work as well, you can move to somewhere else, but you're still in a nonprofit situation. Huh? And by the way, you could even keep the Blue Cross Blue Shield, Anthem, and all those guys in their regional only thing, because it would give the state ones a leg up as well, because those would be available to everybody. So there. Also, I would say to anybody who says that any lobbyist group with the most money has the most profit to be able to spread around. If they got people knocking on your door, that's when you should listen. But if they've got private airplanes they're flying you around on and that kind of stuff, what it means is they're protecting, a slice of the pie that they may not have earned, or they're afraid that comers are going to undermine them. That's another conversation for another time. But I think these are two main areas. We got a public option in everything but healthcare. There is no reasonable reason for that. None. And having a federal single payer you could buy into, or the ability to buy into any state that sells a public option themselves, knowing that any of the profit goes to better the lives of those people there. So if you're in Washington State's one, you can fly to Seattle every so often, and their beaches and streets and infrastructure are paid for partly by your insurance premiums until such time as you need the payment, till you need the care. It may even be such that when you buy into these systems, part of your medical care is that if you're getting some kind of specialty treatment, they fly you there. So you can use their medical infrastructure there as well and not just have everybody be in a network. I'm just saying, there are options here. Let's work it out. Yes, but Cosmic Rose is right. Right now, vote blue no matter who. I don't want to hear shit about anybody about how beating their chest about turning a blue area bluer. Waste of fucking time. Waste of fucking time. And you're endangering people's lives. You're endangering people's livelihoods. It's an infight that need not happen, and it's based on a fallacy that you somehow have convinced the entire world that they should magically agree with you. If that's all you're focused on, all you're saying is, my arguments only work with people who already agree with me. Then you suck and get out of the way. My arguments work with people in the purple areas very well, if you've noticed. And I bet you sit me down with somebody from a deep red district, I'm way better at dragging them into the purple, right? Than somebody who's like, I'm a fighter. All they're going to do is yell at this person, call them fucking stupid. Whereas I can convince them that they're being stupid, and therefore they might cease to be stupid, or at least not be so loud and proud in their stupidity, which again is a win. So there you go. Anyways, chat room, thank you guys so much. Great show. I will see you later this afternoon for the afternoon show, Hal Sparks Mega Worldwide. Like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show, etc., etc., etc. And patreon.com/HalSparks. The Venmo is right there if you want to help the show. Thank you so much to people that have been giving and saying nice things about my dad. In that I'm trying to figure out a way that I can post the people who Venmo, just their name, as a thank you on the regular thing here without it being some sort of weird cut and paste thing where I have to hire somebody to do it, along with, like PayPal and Cash App. It's not something that happens that frequently, but when it does, I want you guys to know I see it and I appreciate it. And Summer will tell anybody that I get a little notification on my watch occasionally that says somebody donated, and it's later, it's after the show or someplace when I'm just walking around and somebody's watching a video and they just did it, and she's seen me tear up at how lovely you guys are, especially during the current unpleasantness. So, anyways, to make you feel better, Hal, boo hiss. Thank you for booing me. Appreciate it. Go watch Brian. I love you guys, and I will see you later. Take care of yourselves and take care of somebody else. You're awesome. Don't forget it.
Promises made, they rot in the air. A handshake, a lie.